Hi, my name is Fred. Welcome to the Old Stuff Show. This is the third in the series of shows that deals with a variety of different collectibles. This is part two of the ephemera. Last part being a look at postcards. Ephemera, don't forget, is the collectible that involves paper type of items, and they come in all different formats and different from different situations. Today we're going to look at a few of the interesting ones that I have, and there is so much. Ephemera goes on and on and on, but like I said, I'm picking out a few of the important ones that I have found myself. So why do people collect this type of thing? Well, this is normally the type of stuff that is thrown away. It is ordinary types of things that people don't normally want to keep. But those that have survived make it a very interesting kind of collectible to look at, and they're scarce, but they're fun to find. Some of these have a historical value. They are a good way of looking at history through ordinary things. Many want to get in their collection as many as possible, and so it's a challenge to find as many items as they can in their particular kind of collectible. Scarcity makes it a challenge, so when it is found, it's kind of like a conquest. These items, these paper things, really are an interesting way of finding out about lifestyle, the time period, technology, trends, fads, fashions, business, how it worked, business costs, how things were advertised. It just covers a broad variety of situations. And if you look at it from then and now perspective, you can also look at how things have changed or how things have stayed the same. So we're going to start off with just one item here. One of the categories is our menus. This particular menu is an old menu from a Canadian Army overseas Christmas 1945 event. Menus people look for, they look for just regular old restaurant menus, look at the prices, look at the kinds of food that were available at that time. A lot of people who are into collecting ship memorabilia like to find menus for the ocean liners especially, and they can be quite interesting, and gives also a sample of the really fancy food that was available on some of these excursions. So you can see also in the menu the prices and like I said, the types of food available, and sometimes menus also offer an idea of a special event. In this case it was Christmas Day 1945. Now, another thing that fits into the category of paper are what's called blotters. Now, this particular one here is kind of interesting for a variety of reasons, but a blotter is simply a backing that will absorb ink after someone has written, say, a letter with a fountain pen, and the ink is not quite dry. This blotting allows it to dry and therefore not smudge. This one here is from an ambulance service, and it's quite old. You can see that the phone number has just 4 numbers. You can see the technology of the automobile, and the company that was offering its services, which in my community, by the way, is still in business. Blotters come in all different ways and different aspects. Advertising blotters, especially with big name products like Coca-Cola, they put out a lot of blotters, and it was just a way for even politicians, when they were running for election, they put a blotter together with their own name and picture and so on, and advertising on the front. So it was a very convenient way of offering advertising was something that people seem to need every day. Typically, another type of paper collectible are letters. Letters which are handwritten. Some people just collect family letters that they've had in their family. I know one person that had letters sent in World War I by their son to them every day in the war, and it was just a great big box full of letters that I was able to look at, and it offered a chronology and it chronicled the war very, very interestingly, first-hand information. Sometimes looking at letters, it's just one letter to another part of the family. It offers a little insight into family history. This particular one is interesting. It's Canadian Legion War Services, and this is 1943-44, and it was a letter written by a soldier home talking about what was happening in his plans. So some good military history in this type of thing. But letters definitely offer a wide variety of information, and sometimes there's all kinds of them available to add to your own family history. We all wrote exams when we were in school in the old days, and I know if you've kept your exams, if you go back to the 50s or earlier, or 60s, 70s, exams seemed to be very important, and every subject had exams, and in some cases there were provincial exams. And you have a copy here, for example, of exams for Queen's University, 1944 in April. Talks about the subjects, it shows you the subjects offered, subject titles, the date when the exam was held, and gives you an insight into the kind of choices that students had in those days. But exams are kind of interesting, and some people say when they look at the exams, they look awfully hard compared to maybe today. I don't know, but exam is an exam, I guess. Stamps. Stamps are kind of a complicated paper collectible to think about. In the old days, people collected stamps for two reasons. One, just because they liked collecting stamps and they wanted to get stamps from a variety of countries in the world or focus on their own country. In the 70s and 80s, there was a big push on buying stamps because they were a good investment. They would increase in value. And as it turns out, stamps haven't really increased in value. There's not that many that are being collected today. The stamps that are the most valuable are the oldest and in good condition. So in Canada, the penny black is considered one of the most valuable stamps from the mid-19th century. Also, in terms of historical situations, you could look at, now I have this, for example, a collection of Nazi stamps, and gives you a look at Hitler and some of the propaganda, the swastika, and so on. So stamps in themselves can be a historical document, offering insight into when they were put out. If you have stamps on letters or postcards or whatever, you get to see the date that stamps were issued. But as far as value, they're more, I suppose, historical in terms of value, unless they're quite old. Ticket stubs. It's a collectible that's certainly interesting and popular. Ticket stubs for concerts, like the original Beatles concerts and Elvis Presley concerts and so on. They're very sought after, and they command a reasonably good price. They're certainly concert tickets, sports tickets, especially special event sports tickets, World Series and that type of thing. Anniversaries. This happens to be a 100th anniversary ticket for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this was a special ticket issued for that game as a souvenir. And so souvenir tickets are very collectible as well. Autographs are kind of difficult to authenticate. There are people who will authenticate autographs. There are fakes out there. So if you think you have an autograph of the Beatles or something, you can send it away to get it authenticated. But don't assume that all the autographs that you see are real. And in many cases, the sports autographs, for example, were signed by secretaries. They would have all kinds of people sending letters and asking for autographs. Same with movie stars. Often the secretaries did the signing. And so we talk about a word, provenance. Provenance is proof of authenticity. And so this would be a good example here of good provenance and a very good autograph. This is a ticket to see Bill Clinton in our local arena, sit down and have a chat with an interviewer for an hour. I bought a ticket to go see him, and it was a very nice evening. And I didn't go inside right away. I looked down the way and I saw a few people hanging out at the back of the auditorium. So I wandered back there, and they said that Bill Clinton was about to arrive, and there were some bodyguards there. And so I thought I would stick around. Sure enough, he showed up and he got out and he walked right over to about 15 people, myself included. And I had the ticket available, and so I asked him if he would sign it, and he did. And so before the event actually happened, I have the ticket signed, and I go in with this ticket, and it was autographed, and I've kept it. So certainly, and I have photographs too of him signing it. So that's what we mean by provenance, that it's real, it's authentic, and that way people don't feel nervous about buying something like this. And autographs are bought and sold. Bill Clinton's, depending on what it's on, can command a price. Any presidential autograph can do that. So sports cards, or not sports cards, collector's cards are another category. And collector's cards came in like tobacco. They're called tobacco cards in cigarette packages. There were sets that people would collect, sets of maybe 50. They also came in tea. The tea cards are collectible today. And the sports, like the bubblegum cards, O-Pee-Chee, and cards of baseball players, and like the rookie Mickey Mantle card being worth tens of thousands of dollars. But the average collector today is looking for tobacco cards or tea cards. So this happens to be a set of cards in an album of the Space Age by Brooke Bond Tea. It's British, and having them in an album like this makes them more valuable, more interesting, because they're explained somewhat. And the whole set in here. The worst thing you can do is glue the cards you get onto backing in an album or whatever, and so you want to make sure that they are hinged or in a slot. But the album itself is important, even if there's no cards in it. It's something that's in demand. Calendars. Now, there's special kinds of calendars. Calendars, are fairly common, but I know that in the sports world, the calendars that were put out by the arenas or the ballparks that were sponsored by perhaps cigarette companies or beer companies are important today. In Toronto, Export A calendars of the Toronto Maple Leafs are very, very collectible. I picked this Elvis Presley calendar up. It's kind of unique in that it's shaped like a record, has a texture of a record, has lots of photographs inside, but it's a calendar. Okay, it's a calendar of not that old, a couple of years old, but it's made to look interesting with all the pictures of Elvis. And the real Elvis collectors look for almost any format. There are so many formats that will help add to their collection. Calendars sometimes are put out by towns or communities. This one is a county calendar from the 70s, and it has illustrations of the main buildings in the town. It's a historic village. And so things like that are put together. Sometimes they're put together for fundraising, but that kind of calendar is quite collectible as well. Maps are in many kinds of formats. Some people collect historical atlases for their maps, or they collect maps that are gas station were given out by Supertest or BA or White Rose. These don't exist anymore, and so they're quite collectible. They were advertising, they were given out by the gas station, so if you can find those, they're very valuable. Or just, this is a plan, an old plan of Kingston that is on paper. Gives, I'm not sure of the source of it, but the serious map collectors would investigate and find out why these maps are important and how old they are. Certificates of all kinds, birth certificate, death certificates, marriage certificates, military certificates, they're all collectible. This one is interesting. It's a certificate issued with the War Service Badge, and this certificate entitled had to be carried at all times when the badge is worn and must be produced when called to do so by military or police officer. So it was serious matter in those days, and to have one of these was very important. Envelopes, just advertising, here's two from the Canadian Pacific Railway. Again, another form of advertising. Envelopes had all kinds of advertising and sometimes illustrations of a company or of an event or whatever on the top left corner. That's always collectible. Receipts. This is a receipt, very old receipt, and it was for $158.90, and it was November from 1831. So, looking at the history of the trade that was going on in the 19th century, if you get a series of receipts, that can be quite fascinating. Paper also comes in the form of little booklets or brochures. This is a 1954 information magazine of Toronto, Ontario. It is what to do, where to go, where to shop, and so you get an idea of the kinds of old stores that were in business at that time. And again, in the now and then, you see companies that are still in business today, and often these have maps inside as well for as a souvenir, as a tourist guide. Special events like Man on the Moon, souvenir things that were put out, pictures and photographs and stories, all with a historical, factual base to, if you collect this type of space memorabilia, that would be very important. Booklets on fashion, for example. This one was put out in Canada's centennial year in 1967. And what it did is it went through all of the fashion trends throughout the 100 years of the existence of Canada, and so with a description. So we have just a wide variety, and today I've just given you a sampling. So in terms of value, there's two kinds of values with paper items. One is the collectability, and the other is the monetary value. Collectability, of course, is based on scarcity and also condition. Value of a monetary value of these, it's a wide variety. If you took a calendar from a sports team in the 1960s. It was 1967 in terms of a hockey calendar. You know, 1967 Toronto Maple Leaf Export A calendar might be $75 and up. If you just take a small calendar from a typical business, it might be worth $5 depending on the interest factor. So not a lot of money involved in that, but certainly there's some that is out there and is available. The money part gets a little more serious in the collector cards. There's a large following for sports cards, for example. Sports cards can be anywhere up from $2 to you know, $75, $100 depending on the player. I mentioned the Mickey Mantle rookie card. I think it sold recently for $30,000, and so you want to check your shoe boxes or whatever you keep your old stuff in. You never know that you might have one that you don't know about. Where do you find these? Well, collector to collector is the most common, I suppose. There's a group well known to each other that share business cards and buy and sell with each other. There's specialty shows. There's a paper show. I know of one paper show in Toronto that has been in business annually. Also at flea market, typically at flea markets and auction sales and eBay. You can check all those typical areas out, and you may get lucky, which again is part of the fun of doing it. There's much more ephemera that I would like to share with you in the future, and so I will do another program that will deal with some different types of materials. I've mentioned to you in the past the way that you can check my website, my eBay website, which is moniker Lonrem, Lonrem. If you go to eBay and you look for the Lonrem items, that's me. And so I do have often regularly paper type items in all formats, from postcards to the kinds of things that I've just shown you here today, and a lot more. But we'll do some more investigating and pass along some more information to you. Every day can be a learning day, and I always think myself, if I didn't learn something daily, then it was a bad day. So that's what I'm here for, to share my knowledge and my experience, and I hope you've learned something today and enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon.